listening to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. This is Dr. Charles Laux. This is episode 109, and we have a guest who has a long history in our string teaching profession and has done awesome things. This is Mr. Frank Lestina. Frank, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the Orchestra Teacher Podcast today.
Well, what an honor. Watching some of your podcasts, of course, and meeting you just a few months ago.
That's
for the
right.
First time at ASTA. So I'm honored that you thought to have me on.
Oh, sure. And I've seen your name all over the place, and I guess I'm sad that it's taken me so long to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation to get to know you a little bit better. So I know that you retired in 2013, if that's right.
That seems so long ago, right?
But you haven't stopped. I know you've done some adjunct work, so we want to hear all about what you've done and where you are now, and then we'll get into. There's all kinds of great things. You have an app that's out. You have an arrangement coming out, and things like that. So, tell us a little bit about your career, Frank, and some of the things you've done and where you are now, I guess.
Sure. I suppose always good to start at the beginning. Pretty typical, fourth grade school program here in the Chicago suburbs, and started as a bass player. And I was into it right away, but high school brought sort of a new element. Had a very passionate high school orchestra director, Robert Dvorak, who was just so instrumental in me and getting more involved in music, and did great repertoire. And I just really got into it. And after starting a career at a junior college in computers, he pulled me aside and said, "What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You should be thinking about music and music ed." And, so I did. And, we're all a product of who we've met along the way.
Right.
And,
for sure.
That was like number one on my list. And then student teaching with some great folks, and then get this first job. I should mention names: Dorothy Kunkel, if that name sounds familiar, and Jack Wirtz up here in the Chicago suburbs.
I don't know them.
Okay.
But
Dorothy Kunkel was big in Midwest Clinic years ago at Albright Middle School, and I had an amazing program. And Jack Wirtz at Oak Park River Forest High School. And that just set me on the right course.
Yep.
And then I landed my first job in Danville. And for those folks not familiar, suburbs are one thing. Danville's 2.5, 3 hours south in the middle of the state.
Okay.
And
not a suburb.
Yeah, not a suburb. And so quite a change. And I was recently married, so it was like my wife and I pick up and we moved to Danville. But that was a huge change and step in my trajectory.
Yeah.
Danville wasn't, in the middle of the state, not a lot of orchestra programs around.
Yeah.
And my main mentor there was the band director named John Dougal. So when you spend all of your time like watching what the band guy does, you start kind of going a little on that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will still say, Frank, he kind of rehearses like a band guy. And I think,
there's plenty of, people who have come from the band world and come to the orchestra world and just killed it. So I think they got some good things going. I'm never going to diss the band director style. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I took that as a compliment. I never went, what? So Danville was a great start. And I did 6th grade through 12th grade, middle school and a high school program. And after 6 years, found a job at Libertyville High School. And sort of the same thing. A great band director, Don Shoup, who's still one of my best friends. And so you can see most of my leaning toward full orchestra was what I did because I had great band programs with good wind players. And then let's see, 14 years at Libertyville High School, and then Vernon Hills, a second school in the same district, opened, and I was asked to come and be orchestra director and fine arts supervisor. So that was a whole new level of, you're now in charge of theater and art and dance. And
that's a lot. Yeah.
Well, yes, but at the same time, I was into theater. I loved doing pit orchestra stuff. So, it just all fit, and then, and that lasted until 14 more years there. And all of a sudden we're at 2013 and had the opportunity to retire and get on the teacher pension system and continue doing things adjunct at DePaul University, Vanderbilt, and still supervise student teachers in strings at DePaul University. And it gives me more opportunity to do guest conducting clinics and my own thing.
That's wonderful. So you get to, besides your adjunct work, you kind of get to set your own schedule, and you get a gig offered to you, and you could say, no, I'm going to be at the beach that week. Sorry, or whatever it might be. But that's fantastic.
I'll throw one more element out being retired is that my daughter became a middle school orchestra teacher.
Cool.
And married the high school orchestra teacher. Ken Tanaki is my son-in-law in Sycamore, Illinois.
Wow, that's a great team.
Yeah. And 2 grandkids that are in the program.
Oh, wow. That's got to be so cool.
So being retired gives me a chance to actually go and hear their concerts and keep up with, because you know what life is like. I mean, even though they're an hour and a half away, we might never get to their concerts because I have concerts.
Right. Yeah. So that gives you that freedom to do that. And wow, that's fantastic. What a joy that has to be to see your kid as a teacher and then your grandkids in the program. That's just fun.
Yeah. It's a great orchestra world.
That is amazing, Frank. So cool. And what classes are you teaching at your university? Besides, I know you're supervising 2 teachers, so that's a load in itself. But.
Right. Well, at Vandercook, I've done a couple of the summer meccas, they call them, which is basically a week-long class. And I just try and put all the different elements, like everything I'd want to know, everything I've learned over the years.
Those are the best type of classes, because I think people really want the nuts and bolts of, this is what I need to know. This is, these are some tips and tricks that have worked for me over my career. Yeah.
And I get to control that. I got to pick whatever I wanted. At DePaul, it's been a while. I did, the cello bass pedagogy classes a couple times, a couple different courses. But now they have others to do that. So I'm not needed there, and I'm fine with that. So I'm just limited to the student teachers and just going out to, which is, I love, I know most of the colleagues, but then every once in a while they're at a placement at a school. So I get to meet someone new and observe the school and see what the programs are doing.
That's so cool. That's so nice that you're able to do that and give back. You're kind of giving back now to that profession that you work so hard as being a part of in the trenches, as we call it. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I know that all the teachers who are, are all benefiting from all of the great work that you're doing. So thanks for that service, because you taught in the public school for how many years?
Yeah, 33 years.
Okay. Yeah. And now you've been retired for 12.
Yes.
So, wow, you're like, you've had crazy experience. This is amazing.
I don't look 100 years old, but
you look great, Frank. You look great, and you're still smiling. That's the most important part. Are you ready to shake up your next orchestra trip? Kaleidoscope Adventures has been planning performance travel beyond expectations for more than 30 years. They know the best destinations and the most iconic venues for orchestras. Check out the Kaleidoscope Adventures link in the show notes below for fresh ideas and inspiration. And then let them do their magic. They'll handle all the details from start to finish, so all you have to do is enjoy the experience.
Yeah, great. Exactly.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about this app, because it's a Viola app, and what does it do, and what is it called? And I will definitely link to it in the description of the podcast here.
Oh, sure, great. Well, this I guess goes back. The short history is, we all needed a viola player or two over the years, and so I started doing what I would call Viola Day in my orchestra class every year. With my freshman orchestra, I would just get the violas and the cellos and basses to do something else, and I'd keep all the violinists. And I figured out how I could sort of explain alto clef and get them actually playing a few notes in alto clef in just one class period.
Right. Cool.
And one of the tricks I think I did, and you'll put the app up there, is see if I can make this work. Get the complete grand staff.
Okay.
And if you superimpose the alto clef over it,
right,
it puts middle C right in the middle C.
Yeah.
So you get 2 lines in treble and 2 lines in bass plus the new line. And once you show kids where the alto clef sits, then it all starts to make sense and quickly can do. And what I used to do is just put have the students learn a couple notes, and then I'd have the violinists use their violin and play notes in alto clef.
Yeah, and actually read the notes.
Read the notes.
You got to read the notes.
Up on the whiteboard and do that. And it worked great, and they did that. Of course, the number one issue is they have to be better at the note names. That's the hardest part. They'll memorize the fingers, they'll know what they're playing, but they're not always thinking the note name. And I finally, about 2 years ago, came up with this plan. If there was only an app. So I found a guy, Matt Farmer, a local guy who in the tech thing is a band director gone to the tech side.
Wow. Okay.
And I told him what I wanted to do, and he came up with this. And
nice.
I think it really works. It allows you to start out with the grand staff helping you, and then you can fade it away.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can just be working in the alto clef. And then to make it even easier, instead of just clicking on the note name, you probably saw this too. I have a fingerboard of the viola. So you're actually clicking on the finger. So you have to know not only the note name, but where it is on the fingerboard.
That's cool. Yes. And what is the app called? So like everybody knows.
Wow. What is it called? There's no official name, but
when they were to search for it in the App Store for
they could do 2 things. They could look at franklestina.com.
Okay.
It's right on my website.
Cool.
But I also call it violintoviola.com.
That's great.
So, abbreviated though, VLN, the 2.
Number 2.
VLA.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so it's a way of getting violinists to viola.
Perfect.
And my concept there also, I'll bring it up, is I don't think we do any of our serious music students any service. We do them a disservice by not explaining to our violinists how easy it is to play viola. I mean, they already know how to play the viola.
Right.
And violists to play violin. They should be doing both if they're thinking about doing anything in music.
100%. I mean, when I was a junior in college, our university was really short on violas, and so I was kind of encouraged to do that. So I pretty much switched to viola my junior year of college. A lot of people don't know this, and ended up finishing my recital and doing my recital on viola too. And then I magically moved to Las Vegas, and there were tons of violin players there, and some really good ones. And I was, okay player. Right. And so I played viola. I played in the Las Vegas Philharmonic for a few years, and pretty much played only viola in Las Vegas, like when I was there. Yeah. Then I moved to Florida, and there were tons of viola players, and I needed violin players. So I started playing violin again. And then ever since then, I've been mostly violin, but I do play viola still. And it's a great instrument. But yeah, anybody that's a performing musician on violin should also be able to pick up a viola and play gigs on it, because marketability is important, especially if you're only performing or teaching. You want to be able to teach both, and you got to be able to read that alto clef. And as an orchestra director, the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And one of the other things I'll throw out there, we've all seen the tricks that of thinking you're in third position, or
I used that one at first.
Yeah, everybody that uses that eventually never really gets fluent in where those notes are.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I'm trying to get everybody to think, okay, it's not that hard when you just put the clef in its proper place and you see what those notes are, and it helps a lot, I think.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, I'll link to that in the podcast description, so check it out. And I think it'll be awesome for people to check out.
And I should mention, this is just a free app.
Perfect.
Okay, there's no paywall or anything else. I just did this and put it out there, sort of my little contribution to the alto world.
That's awesome. But you'll take a donation though if someone wants to donate to your vacation fund.
They'll have to buy me a beverage somewhere.
Right. Wonderful. Well, that's so cool. And then I know that you've done throughout your career, you've had obviously not gigantic programs, right? I mean, how large were your programs at your schools that you took to Midwest and things? Did you have pretty good numbers?
Well, Libertyville High School has a student population of about 2,200 or so. So pretty decent school. Vernon Hills, when it opened, was quite a bit smaller, just about 1,200, 1,300 students.
Yeah.
So, I was very excited when the Libertyville High School Orchestra was accepted to perform at Midwest, if that's where you're going.
Well, I am. And I also you talked a little bit about adapting repertoire for, because sometimes you'll get I have a problem right now. This coming year, my freshman orchestra is 44 kids, 16 cellos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 16 cellos and a lot of violas and less violins, when you split the sections first and second than anything else. So I'm going to be doing some repertoire arranging. I don't know if you want to talk about that first, since I kind of went there.
Yes. I would love to. It sounds very similar to Illinois Summer Youth Music. ISYM is a University of Illinois program, and I did that 2.5 summers ago, or 2 summers ago. Yeah, just 2 summers ago. And they wanted to do full orchestra. And then I found out similar thing, like 16 cellos, 16 violas, and I only had 13 violins split in 2 sections.
Yeah.
And, there where you have to be a little creative. And for me at that point, I looked through the repertoire and I just went, okay, I need a piece that has a lot of unison string playing. And, so then I found, a Jupiter from the Planets, but a little challenging, So I had to rewrite a little bit of the wind parts. I rewrote that big 5-sharp section just a little bit. I'll modify things so that we can actually perform that with some great players, but a lot of average players.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I made any changes to the second violin part, but that's typical too. I'll rewrite, just repeat a note instead of, so I'm not making drastic changes, but just little things to make it work.
We want to make, for all kids, music accessible, and sometimes there are certain little small things within a piece that just make it almost impossible to play, and you can make those tweaks to make it playable. So that sounds like that's what you've done.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that another piece I really wanted to do was the Smetana Moldau, right? And that little second violin part in the beginning gets a little noodly and bussing strings. So I just moved one note and repeated a note. The audience is never going to know.
Right.
So the second violin part is all of a sudden 50% easier in the beginning. Its letter K is just ridiculously hard in the rapids. So I rewrote a completely new second violin part, and then the first violin part down an octave in some places for some of the students. And those are the sorts of things that I've found out doing over the years.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the E major section at the end, just too many notes. So, you just reduce that. And then other pieces, you adjust. The wind parts need to be adjusted sometimes more than the strings. Make it work.
Wind players have just a tough time, especially if they haven't had a lot of orchestra experience and playing in some of those keys. Normally what the band likes, strings don't, and vice versa. So
absolutely. Yeah. So that's just tons of individual parts on my computer in Finale that are like, okay, this is the viola part now for this piece or whatever, but so that's been sort of my, I love doing challenging repertoire and making it work for the group that I have.
And that's what it's about, because if you don't do that, sometimes just the performance doesn't come out the way it's supposed to. And people will hear if you play wrong notes or out of tune notes. They won't hear it if you make alterations of those notes or modifications or play an arrangement. Like, a lot of people won't know that,
Right.
And that's,
I'll throw out one more that
sure.
I love this little change. The St. Paul Suite, skip my mind for a minute.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that first movement jig. Many groups are still doing it, but everything works fine until you get to that little section at the end where all of a sudden it's in 6 sharps.
Yeah.
Do you know that section?
Yeah, I do.
Well, guess what? That section works a half step lower.
Oh, okay.
So right where Holst all of a sudden goes from C major to a C sharp, does this half step up thing, and then you have to play all that stuff in all those sharps.
Right.
I just don't do that. I keep it in F major. And then right when he gets to, there's a spot 16 bars later that goes from E sharp to F natural. Going back to the original, I go up the half step there.
Oh, okay.
It works just fine. And that I've handed out to all my friends too, like, here, try it this way without those sharps. And those are the sorts of things I love, finding these little tricks or little things that make that piece. Sure, maybe it's just a little bit easier, but it also sounds a lot more in tune.
Yeah, that's for sure. And some groups just need that,
Right.
And there's also, some will say, well, why are you doing this? You should be playing it as it is. But we're in education, and we're trying to give kids a great experience and also put out a good product. And I think that's justified.
That is the argument, and that's the line you have to walk. Eventually you want to challenge them and play the original exactly the way it was. But I've too often, I think we expect students to play beyond their level to keep up with others, and you're not doing them any service.
No, because you work like a dog on so many measures, 4 measures, 8 measures, and how much time are you spending on that? And are there other things that could be taught instead of just drilling these notes and these repetitive things into their heads? I think
you nailed it. That's exactly right. Yeah. There's plenty to work on.
For sure. And then you have an arrangement coming out soon.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. Going back a couple of years, I'll tell you the concept. Everybody who's done these clinics with guest conducting for a festival, whether it's an all-state or a district, they'll find their opening piece, and then they'll find their finale, and then they go, I need a middle piece.
The middle piece is always the hardest to program.
I just need to find some kind of a contrast, right? And then everybody comes 90% of the time to the same conclusion. I know, I'll do Nimrod. And so I can't tell you how many times I've heard Nimrod just because there's no other slow, full orchestra piece to throw in for a few minutes, to add contrast.
And that they can learn in a short time, usually have, an honor orchestra or something like that, right?
And so for a long time, I just want to have another piece that works. And as odd as it sounds, the opening of Mahler 3 finale, which starts with just strings and just builds, I just fell in love with that piece. And I thought that would make such a great, if there was a shorter version. And sure enough, there's a band version of that that's out there that wind ensembles know quite well. And I was not that familiar with it until after I started it. So I started a full orchestra arrangement of Mahler, got it down to about 8 minutes instead of 26 minutes.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, it worked pretty well.
Yeah.
And while I was doing that, I said, this could work for strings too. So I had I had these two arrangements going at the same time, of string and full.
Right.
And sure enough, the string one was much more interest. There were a lot of my colleagues. It's been performed about 12 times.
Cool.
It's available on ArrangeMe. So
Okay.
self-published.
ArrangeMe.com. Yep. I can put a link up to that too.
And you could find that, plus the Holst that I talked about too.
Oh, cool.
But I wanted to get it published, so I threw it out there to a number of different publishers, and they all said the same thing: it's too long, and it's a grade 4.5.
Yeah, and being that I work with Hal Leonard and publishing, I know that those are extremely difficult to get published because they're looking for sale volume.
Exactly.
And not just this will be great for some people, but yeah, that's a difficult sell.
So I kind of didn't give in for a year, and then just last December, 8-9 months ago, I went, all right, I'm going to take this 8-minute string arrangement and get it down to 5 and get it to a 3.5. And I did. I feel pretty good about it.
Great.
It still works. And I sent it out to Brian Balmages, who was interested in the original one, but he said it's too long. And Make Music took me up on it.
Yay.
So it's supposedly going to the engraver soon, and it'll be my first published arrangement.
Congratulations. Congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah. It's tough, and ArrangeMe is great because you can put up pretty much whatever you want.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. The length doesn't matter because people are just downloading it. Right. So they're not, the investment for the publishing company to have to print copies and all that and sell it that way is not there. So there's so much great stuff on ArrangeMe, but congrats on your real published arrangement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It does feel different. You know, it's different to say I'm published or I'm self-published. You know?
Right. Yeah. ArrangeMe, even though it's ArrangeMe, you're still self-publishing, I would say. Because I have a few arrangements on there. My Mozart arrangement came out, I was last year or the year before. That was my first one too. So it's just taking me a long time to pardon?
What was that again?
It just came out last year. It's a Mozart Ascanio and Alba overture.
All right.
And it's kind of one of his really early opera overtures. And I had heard it on just listening, streaming stuff, just like, what is this? What is this Mozart? And it's like, oh, this cool. So I looked it up and it's like, man, it would fit strings great because, obviously early Mozart is going to be, winds are going to be just providing some support rather than main melodies most of the time. And it worked out great. And I sent it in and I was surprised. They're like, yeah, let's put a cover on it. So I'm like, cool. So
congrats there.
Yeah. So after teaching for so long and you as well, it's like, it feels kind of good to have something out there, I guess.
Well, and I wish there was a way. I have a good friend, Tim Fox, who is an orchestra director in the area here, and he and I actually chatted. We both have all these things on our computer. Wouldn't it be cool if there was just a place just for, you need that bass clarinet part reduced for bassoon, and I've already got that. And how many times have we rewritten the trombone part for French horn or whatever?
Right. Yeah, those what if moments, and it's a lot of work taking apart and entering the whole thing just to and it's great on Finale or no, not anymore, I guess Finale, but whatever software you're using to be able to just click 2 buttons and there you go, there's your part kid, but putting it in, entering it does take some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to not have to do that or help someone out by not having to do that would be great.
Yeah. So maybe Tim and I will come up with a way to share all of those files somewhere.
Yeah. So
just look for it before you create your own part.
That's right. Well, maybe we could look at putting on orchestrateacher.net. That's my
There you go.
We'll talk about that maybe afterwards. But and then the other thing I had in my notes were you mentioned like rehearsal priorities. What are some of the things that you when you're rehearsing a group, regardless of what it is, what are the priorities? What are things that you set first? Or
Yeah.
you have an order or?
Well, I don't know if I have an exact order, but I do find that well, a couple of different thoughts that come to mind. When it comes to rhythm, I think there's a little bit too much emphasis on trying to teach students to become better readers in rhythm. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll see if I can back my statement up here. We don't think enough about pulse. So what I've found when I'm rehearsing, I focus on the pulse and a little bit of the rhythm. It doesn't take students long to learn rhythms. Okay, they'll figure that out, but the pulse sometimes still is the issue.
Right.
And one of the things I came up years ago was whenever I had 90% of the time, let's say 90, the dotted quarter is the evil one.
Yeah.
Everything
Oh, yeah.
goes along, and all of a sudden, kids are just getting thrown off by the dotted quarter. They're not thrown off by the dotted half. They're not even thrown off by the dotted 8th, 16th pattern, but the dotted quarter just gets them.
Yeah.
So instead of teaching like all the rhythms in the world, I came up with something I call a 3-column thing, comparing, let's say, a 4/4 measure to a 2/4 measure to a 1-beat measure.
Okay.
And with the same rhythm in each one. So picture you've got a dotted half followed by a quarter, and then you've got a dotted quarter followed by an 8th. And then the next column over, you've got a dotted 8th followed by a 16th.
Mm-hmm.
And you put all those rhythms next to each other, so you're comparing them.
Okay.
And it just makes everything clearer for the students. All right. And now they're not going to be great readers just because of that, but at least I know they understand that rhythm tree concept.
Okay.
And then when I'm rehearsing, my focus is generally on keeping an 8th note pulse. So they always have to feel the 8th note pulse.
Mm-hmm.
If they know that there are 3 8th notes in a dotted quarter, they're going to be more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like when we subdivide it, I call it the S word in my classroom. Is like, what's the S word? Everybody knows. Subdivide, right?
Subdivide. Exactly. You have to feel that subdivision as you're rehearsing. Along with that, when I'm doing guest conducting things, what's the biggest issue you fight with guest conducting? Kids all learn the piece separately. They come together. They all have a slightly different tempo, and all of a sudden you've got pulse issues.
Yeah.
So what I figured out also years ago is that when groups are not together, we always think that, well, some are early and some are late and some are on time. I found out that's wrong. Scientifically, no, I just...
there's great research out there, and there's great things that are shown through research. Yes. But anecdotally, there's so many anecdotal evidence, I guess, that we've gotten from our teachings over the years that we know maybe it works for us, maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for a lot of people. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's right. All right. But what I finally realized is that when it comes, like, let's use pizzicato to be as an example. You give a downbeat for pizzicato. No one is ever late. They just start early or they're on time. So when I do my guest conducting, if I have a pulse issue or groups not playing together, I just explain to them, don't be early. It's the only time in your life you're going to be told not to be early.
Yeah.
But don't be early. And then to prove that, I will actually conduct a couple bars and then delay a downbeat for letter A. And of course, they'll come in early. And I said, now, if we can all prevent ourselves from coming in early, we won't fall apart, we won't have issues, and so forth. So that's kind of my standard routine when I'm guest conducting or working with a group. If they're not, ensemble is a little bit of an issue. Look, let's just make sure we're all wait for that downbeat. And that just came from observing other groups, observing professional orchestras that delay their downbeats, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it, because I never really thought about it that way. Like, let's be on time, but no, if you're just don't be early, you'll probably be together. Yeah,
right. And then it's together. So I like that. Let's
Yeah.
see. When it comes to intonation, the I had a note here what I was going to say. Oh, I know what it was. One of the big things I've found with intonation is, do students really know if it's a whole step or a half step when they're playing?
I would say a lot of them don't know, right?
I
Being able to identify an interval, even as simple as a whole step or half step, but beyond
Yeah,
that too,
and that led me to thinking, do they really know that? Do they know the spacing? Do they actually know the note name? Like, for example, first violins, when they get above fifth position and they're just playing, I'll stop them and I'll say, okay, start in the third measure, say the note names for me. And they can't.
Yeah.
Well, if they can't say the note names,
Then they
do not know where the whole steps and half steps
right, exactly.
do that. So one technique I like to do is stop and cut to the chase. I'll just say, okay, first violins, everybody play that down an octave.
There you
And they
go.
How? Well, if you know the note name, you'll be able to do
Very
that.
easy to do, right? Yeah.
Well, before I'll have them play up, something really high. I say, okay, let's just all play it down an octave, and then they get it in their ear, and then they could play that. And they also know that note name. But that's one of the things that, for me and with my program, I want to make sure I want to know whether the student knows where the note is, knows the note name, or is just missing.
Yeah.
Are they just got the space wrong, or do they not know?
They're just guessing. Yeah. Yeah. I find most of the time it's they don't know, like fifth position on the E string in the violin. Like, what note is that? You need to know what note you're going to play. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So that plus, I use the piano a lot later on in my career. I'd have the piano in front of the class.
Are you a pianist? Can you play?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely the farthest from it. But the hand-in exercises when I was taking piano helped a lot, so I could play unison in octaves.
Yeah. That's important.
Well, that's all you need. I mean, I don't want to play the whole part, but as you're going through something, and if there's a tricky harmonic in the inner parts in second violin or viola, I'll play that along with them. Once it's in their ear, they'll know what that is.
It helps.
Saves so much time instead of sitting and going, seconds, a little, come on, your F sharp's a little low. Could you?
Yeah, they need the aural model. Yeah, they need the aural model, right? I spend a lot of time. I have my Harmony Director keyboard, my Yamaha. It's like right next to me, I'm I'm way better piano right hand than left hand, so I can play all the parts while I can conduct. I got better at conducting with my left hand and can conduct and play a part, help them out. But yeah, it's so important that they hear the aural model. They need that.
And I already talked about borrowing things from my colleagues in the band world. That I borrowed from our choir director. I mean, can you imagine running a choir rehearsal and never using the piano?
Yeah.
It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And if you've watched a vocal jazz ensemble work, he sits at the piano. The conductor, the director just sits at the piano and just plays all those parts.
Yeah.
And they hear it, and once they hear it, then they've got it. And I'm thinking, with those close harmonies in the string world, why aren't we doing the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Get it set in their ear, know what that is supposed to sound like, and then you get away from the piano and make them do it on their own.
Right. Yeah, I'm guilty a lot of playing my instrument, but I do that. And I was like, can they hear me? And most of the time, it's probably a no, unless we're stopped, of course, and I can play. But while we're playing, a keyboard, I can turn it up a little bit.
Well, and the timbre being different helps too.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You're just another violinist and they're hearing others play that. But when you're playing on an electric keyboard or a real keyboard and they know which one is the true,
this is the voice of reason.
The one that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing that in piano, it's important sometimes to play it up or down an octave from where they're playing. Mm-hmm. So they really can hear that, or in octave. So the first violin part, I'll play down an octave and they're tuning to that. Yeah. The basses, sometimes I'll tune up an octave and they have to, play it up an octave from where they are. So it's they can really hear that tuning.
Yeah, because the tuning on the bass is probably one of the most difficult things that kids have to do, and especially the very low notes, E string, A string notes, sometimes just hard to hear, and if they can hear that octave up, it definitely is a big help.
Yeah, or just hearing the piano in general.
Right.
Just being able to hear to match the pitch on the piano instead of trying to match 5 basses together. Oh my.
Yeah. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I know at the Midwest Clinic, you run some of the new music reading sessions.
Yeah, that started right after I retired.
Mm-hmm.
They were Brian Miller. If you've been to those sessions, Brian Miller had started the readings, new music reading session for orchestra with the Chicago Educators Orchestra.
Okay.
And he did that 1 year before I retired. And then they needed somebody to help select the music. Like, what tunes are we going to do? And Brian didn't want to do that part.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked me if I would kind of share that responsibility with him. So I became the moderator for that session.
Cool.
And I've done it now, I think 11 years.
Yeah. And are you doing it this current year?
As far as I know.
Okay. I think there's a really good Mahler 3 arrangement coming out that might be you can put in there. Ding. Yeah.
That's going to be awkward.
No, I mean, it's okay. If it's valuable for the profession, just because it's yours doesn't mean, I think it'd be really neat. I'd love to hear it.
Thank you for that. Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure it'll be available if it'll be in print by then.
Sure.
And it has to be submitted by the publisher first.
Aha.
They submit. The way that works is each publisher gets to submit 5 works, and then we select one from each publisher to perform for that day.
Yep.
So that's up to Brian.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's all about the business,
Yeah.
Selling copies.
It's a good model, and I've been again. It's one of those things that you said before, giving back.
Yeah.
The Midwest Clinic has been very special of course, growing up in the Chicago area. Even when I was in high school, that orchestra director I mentioned, Robert Dvorak, used to do a field trip with us and go down there, and we'd hear groups. So
what a great field trip.
Right? I'm a sophomore in high school going to hear the Midwest Clinic at the first year at the Sherman House. Boy, now I'm old. And then
I don't know, where was the Sherman House?
They've since torn that down.
Okay. That was a hotel.
That was Sherman House Hotel, I think, was the original Midwest location. And then it moved to the Hilton.
Okay. I've been to the Hilton, so that ages me a little bit, but not, I don't know. My first time at Midwest was 2006. So
yeah.
I'm
talking 1976. So come on.
Sorry to age you, Frank.
Wait,
that's really cool.
Oh, I take that back. 1973.
Okay. I don't remember that year either.
First year at the Midwest Clinic as a high school student.
Wow.
Just attending.
Yeah.
So it's been a special place, connection that I've had all along. And I mentioned Danville, and John Dougal's band played at the Midwest Clinic in the early 80s.
Okay.
So then I found, whoa, this is a whole new experience going with your high school band and seeing what they're doing. And then I was able to do that at Libertyville and Vernon Hills. So
congrats. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. It's a great conference to get inspired and obviously to learn. But for me, it's just inspiration and realizing how bad my orchestra sounds. No, compared to some of the groups are just incredible, and it's super fun to go there and listen and learn and new repertoire ideas. And so if you're out there and listening, you haven't been to Midwest, you got to go sometime. And Chicago during that time for me it just feels, the holidays and everything. It's super nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you're right. That is one of the things that, sometimes those groups are so amazing. You wonder what you're going to benefit from them. But, the Midwest Clinic rule is every group performing has to do half the repertoire has to be grade 3 and
under. Yeah.
And I think that's not only good for the audience, but it also protects the director from over programming and
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
putting yourself in trouble there.
Yeah. No, but it's great to go hear all the different repertoire that's out there and the different levels, because you can go hear a high school orchestra and they're going to play some middle school music. So it's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then I know over your years, you said you've traveled to Europe and done some other things. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your travel experiences?
Yeah, going back to my high school days, I'm gonna start there. My high school did a trip, not a performing trip, but so my first trip to Europe was with my high school, going and touring culturally and listening to concerts. And I thought, this is just amazing. So when I started teaching, I had an opportunity to bring some of my students from Danville, share a trip with somebody. And it opened up their world, just like it opened up my world.
Yeah.
So travel has always been, for me, an opportunity culturally in the orchestra world to get to that mainland Europe and hit some of those places with such a great historical, background with all the great composers that we've been performing. So every opportunity, every 2-3 years, I would try and get a trip going, and that ended up going eventually to performing,
Nice.
Bringing groups to perform. And
so at first you just took your groups and you didn't perform, you just went and learned about Beethoven, Mozart, or whoever, right, all those things. Mm-hmm.
Just my first year in high school, as a high school student, performed. My first opportunity in Danville was actually taking my strolling strings group with Stan Nozel from Kenosha, Wisconsin, Tremper High School, and combined with his group, and we brought our strolling strings and performed. And what a trip. I mean, it was just amazing. And I was just a young kid then, 23 years old, taking my kids to Europe.
Gosh, yeah. It was a different world back then as well.
Yeah,
it really was. Travel restrictions, and I mean, that's when you can go up to the gate of the plane without any security or anything. But
right?
It's a lot different now.
Yeah. So, but then every trip I did except one was a performing trip, to go and give the students that opportunity to perform they never forget the applause that doesn't stop in Europe.
Yeah.
We just get tired of clapping here in the States after, about 2 or 3 minutes, and the students are looking around and why do they keep clapping, and they'll never forget that experience.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I learned the hard way that we had to have an encore, because they don't. they don't. Yeah. So my first trip there with real repertoire, not strolling strings, we just had to learn how to go back and play the mambo over again in West Side Story.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going to stop until we did.
Until you started something, right?
Right. Start at letter L.
That's amazing. So how many trips to Europe did you take then over the years?
Oh, I should have counted up. I would say 10 or 11 trips over 35 years.
That's amazing. I have not done that yet. I'm actually going to Europe for the first time next month. With my family, and looking forward to some time in the UK, and we're going to go to Amsterdam and Paris. So never been. So
it was the opposite after I don't know how many trips, 8 or so trips to Europe. My wife's turned to me and says, "When are you going to take me to Europe without the kids?"
Well, that's what I told my kids. I said, I'm not taking you to Europe unless I've been there first by myself. So I guess it's the opposite, but yeah,
mine was the opposite. I did heed that lesson, and so my wife and I have traveled now a few times to Europe, more than a few times.
Yeah. And that's the amazing thing about being retired too, is you can go at the non-peak times, right? You can go when everybody else is in school and working, and it's great.
Yeah, summer travel is for the amateurs.
Well, and it's a lot more expensive and a lot busier. So yeah, you're getting the advantage there.
Yeah, try and do that.
Well, Frank, this has been super fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. Is there anything else, or how about, can you give us maybe like one piece of advice that, with all of your experience and your wisdom and everything that you've done, one piece of advice that you would give to any string teacher, I guess?
Wow. I'm looking over a couple of notes I wrote here, and I'm trying to figure that out. I need to get away from the notes and
Sure. Yeah, I think
that.
that's what I'm looking for, is like something that just like words of wisdom for us that are maybe us that are still in the trenches, if you want to call it.
Yeah. You know what? I mentioned this earlier about who you meet along the way. Every person is going to have an impact on what you're doing. And if you're out there and you're in the orchestra world, take those opportunities, not just to go to Midwest, to go to ASTA, to take the chance to bring your group to perform somewhere and work with guest conductors and guest clinicians in those opportunities, side-by-side concerts at universities. Every time you do one of those things, you grow, your students grow, and you learn things. And that has, I'm thinking back now on all those different opportunities for students, because you're not only sharing your music, but you're also, in the university, my gosh, bringing students there. Not only they're learning music, but they're visiting a campus, and that campus might end up being their home because they just fell in love with, the campus, or they had such a great experience with the orchestra director that they want to go and play in the second orchestra at University of Illinois, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So you just keep looking for those opportunities, and I'll go back to the other thing is, don't be afraid to make changes in your music. Challenge your students, but then make that 2 or 3 little changes that make it accessible and make it
be realistic, I guess. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic, Frank. Thank you so much for being here. Wonderful guest. Learned a lot from you, and I know everybody else listening has done the same, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So everyone, without further ado, thank you so much for being a part of our episode 109, and we will see you next time on the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening. You can support the work I do by hitting that like button and subscribing to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast YouTube channel and visiting www.orchestrateacher.net.